Hello, and welcome to this talk. If you've listened to any of my other YouTubes, you may be surprised at what I'm going to be saying here in this one. Till now, I've pretty much exclusively spoken about the personal ascension process, only using the collective ascension process of humanity as a backdrop to this. But in this last year, I've become much more aware and focused on the ascension of humanity as a whole. And this is mainly due to the fact that as a race, we have entered a very significant stage in our evolution. And it's intriguing to watch the drama play out in this larger arena. And I've also realized that as light workers, I think it's essential that we wake up to the larger picture of what is occurring on the world stage and to delve more deeply into the information available to find truths that have been hidden from us for a long, long time. If we're going to be successful in creating and building the new Earth, we have to know the full truth about our existence in the old Earth that we've been living in. So in this YouTube, I'm going to be introducing to you information that may seem somewhat strange if it's new to you, or somewhat dark at first. It may be mind-stretching or mind-blowing, but see if you can stay open to it. You will hopefully realize how important it is for you to be at least somewhat aware of this kind of information I'll be presenting. And in many ways, if nothing else, the bigger picture of what I'll be presenting is a really fascinating story. It's information that I've gleaned from multiple alternative news channels on the internet for a number of years, and also from a number of books by very credible investigative journalists who meticulously list their sources, most of whom are very courageous whistleblowers from within governmental agencies, the U.S. intelligence communities, the military, space programs, and large corporations that have worked closely with the U.S. government over the last few decades. Now, I'm very aware that it's important to be discerning as to what we decide to take in as truth these days, as there's a lot of fake news that appears on both the internet and in mainstream news. However, what I'm choosing to share with you here is information that deeply resonates within me as truth. It at least feels important to be open to considering it as possible truth, as it is what makes sense of many of the puzzling events that are taking place on the planet today. Although initially it may feel like dark information, you'll see that it's ultimately very liberating and uplifting to take in. You'll see that as chaotic and out of control that the events in the world seem to be at this point, we are actually shifting towards a very positive state of affairs on planet Earth. It's going to take some time for all of it to play out, but we are moving in that direction. And in fact, we're currently entering a pivotal point in the shift that the Earth is making toward the fifth dimension. These times of great global unrest and turmoil are manifestations of the transitional times, as they've been called, that have been predicted on the Earth and for humanity since ancient times, actually. And these are times in which all of the old social, financial, religious, and political structures that have been out of integrity are now in the process of collapsing and revealing the insidious corruption and at times a darkness beyond belief that have run rampant within these structures for decades, and in some cases even hundreds of years. This dismantling of structures has to happen because corruption and greed and lack of integrity cannot go with us into the fifth dimension. However, as upsetting as all this chaos and uncertainty during these times of collapse may be, it is important to note that disclosure about this corruption and dark secrets is now occurring on a wide scale. It's been revealed in books and on alternative and international sources for a while, but now increasing numbers of whistleblowers are emerging, fully disclosing the lies and secrets that have been kept from us by powerful sources, often known as the deep state. The people involved in the deep state activities are generally known collectively as the cabal, or the Illuminati sometimes. And it's now clear that these elitist families have actually been running geopolitical politics, the wars, and financial, religious, and social institutions behind the scenes for many years. The lies and secrets being disclosed now can sound unbelievable when you first hear or read about them. They sound like science fiction or conspiracy theories concocted by unhinged, discontented individuals. And if it sounds this way to you, see if you can move past your mind, which, like all of ours, has been conditioned to think like this, and feel into how your gut and your heart respond to it, because they may well resonate with what is being disclosed, despite what your mind may think. When you begin researching about the cabal and their activities, what you discover is that this small group of powerful people has essentially run the world since ancient times, usually far below the outer trappings of government. You learn that they've managed to control and manipulate the rest of humanity in such a way as to essentially enslave us, keep us weak, poor, unempowered, and unable to truly remember ourselves as the powerful, multidimensional beings of light that we inherently are. I know it can be hard for certain light workers to want to become aware of all this kind of darkness that Cabal has created and that we've been caught in, because it can be seen as negative. And this is understandable. However, as I've said, it's important to remember that if we are here to turn the darkness into light and create a new earth with viable alternative institutions and ways of interacting with each other, we need to see and understand the full scope and depth of what we're dealing with. And as light workers, it's also important to be ready for when full disclosure is finally revealed to the general public. This seems inevitable at some point and probably could happen in the near future. So knowing ahead of time, before the general public is hit with all of it, will help us to assist other people in understanding and accepting the truths being revealed. We will be past our shock and overwhelm and be in a position to help others past theirs. So, if you're feeling called to take on this task, or you're just interested in this kind of information, sit back and just take in briefly what some of the manipulation and control has been. And then I'm going to be going into some truly fascinating information about the ET presence on and around the Earth that has also been kept from us. And very importantly, as you hear all this, keep in mind the very good news that currently all the corruption, lies, and secrets are now being revealed, and that there are people known as white hats in all government agencies now and in the military who are working diligently to clean out the corruption. Humanity's liberation from all manipulation and control is actually gradually occurring, even though we don't hear about it in the mainstream news. And as light workers, we can assist this process by staying positive and optimistic, and also by sending supportive, loving energy to all those involved in this work of cleaning up the mess. So, how has the cabal managed to control and manipulate us? I'm going to be very brief here and just touch on highlights. And a lot of this you may already know, but you may not have put all the pieces together to see the larger picture. So, first, they have greatly controlled us through the financial structures they've set up across the world, making them, the 1%, owners of the 90% of the wealth on the planet. Now, this isn't new information. We've all heard it, but it's important to keep it in mind when we see so many people on the planet, even in first world countries, struggling to make a living and also going hungry. Something you may not know is that since 1913, U.S. currency has been owned and managed by a private corporation of international cabal bankers known as the Federal Reserve System. This is a private corporation. It's not a U.S. government agency. And it is this institution that prints the U.S. currency. It's not the U.S. Treasury, as many think. And they continue to print money and do with it what they will without any oversight whatsoever. In the past few decades, they've been creating money out of thin air without any gold or asset backing. And they've been charging the U.S. government, which in turn charges the American public, for the use of this currency. Just take that in for a moment, if this is new for you. Another important fact to keep in mind is that the U.S. government is in enormous debt, which increases year by year. And in particular, a huge amount of money is missing from the Pentagon's budget, anywhere from $20 million to $6.5 trillion, depending on which source you happen to read. Either figure is huge. The Pentagon has never been audited. The corruption in this organization, and also in the Federal Reserve System, and also in the IRS as well, by the way, is really just beyond belief. The American middle class has been rapidly disappearing due to all of this, and many people continue daily to fall below the poverty line. So that's briefly the financial picture. As I say, there's a whole lot more, but that just gives you some highlights. A second way the cabal has controlled us is through political control. The type of political corruption we occasionally see reported in mainstream news is only the very tip of the iceberg and rarely includes the depth of corruption that is actually occurring. There's clear evidence, for example, that most presidents and others in elected offices, especially in the U.S., have been selected, groomed, and bought by the cabal families even before they're elected. These families essentially run both major political parties in the U.S., and they control many of the decisions made by the political figures they've put into office. Something else most people don't realize is that in researching the true history of the U.S. government, you can discover that the U.S. was transformed into a corporation in 1871. It's no longer a sovereign republic, and it has been politically and financially run as a corporation behind the scenes by a very few banking families in the U.S. and Europe. In addition, there's much documentation you can find that it's the cabal that has started all the major wars in the last century. And then, unbelievably, they have financed both sides. This may sound ridiculous, but you can easily find evidence of this on the internet and in books. The information is out there. Most people just don't know about it. Our elected officials actually have much less power than we tend to imagine. It's still a very small number of families who actually run most countries in this world, especially in the West. Yet another way we've all been manipulated by the cabal is through a wide variety of mind control techniques, especially those operated by factions within the CIA and the Pentagon. They've had their hands on the movies Hollywood has produced for decades, as well as what appears in comic books and electronic games. Their messages have essentially been ones inciting us to experience fear and anger, and also to make us believe that the ideas of extraterrestrials on Earth and groups of evil humans controlling the world are just fictional, that none of that is real. They're very clever. When you research it, you find that they have also huge control over the mainstream media sources in the U.S., which are all owned by just 6 corporations. And they've discredited through these sources all conspiracy disclosures that hundreds of books and videos have clearly shown the truth about by calling them theories, such as the JFK assassination, 9/11, and the many other false flag terror events that have occurred since. They've exerted control over the major religions throughout the centuries and the educational institutions as well, negatively skewing information and distorting facts in order to stay in control. Most of us are actually brainwashed with limited and distorted information since childhood in so many different ways that we have really no idea of what is actually true. Yet another way the cabal has manipulated us, especially in recent times, is through creating ill health and weakness in a variety of ways. Take the food contamination that exists, for example. Just think about it. There are pesticides we have to avoid, GMOs, preservatives, all of these toxic chemicals that are in food all over the world now. If we don't avoid foods with these things in them, and it costs a lot of money to buy foods that don't have pesticides and all the other chemicals in them, we're actually taking poisons into our bodies. Just think about that. We take this for granted. Oh, yes, we have to get organic. We have to avoid GMOs. But why is this? Why is this so prevalent? Okay, then there's water contamination. First, there's fluoride, a known neurotoxin routinely put in our tap water. And there are tons of pharmaceuticals that don't get flushed out either. And then we have to try to avoid tap water by drinking water in plastic bottles. But guess what? We're usually taking in the dangerous chemical of BPA when we do that. And then there's fracking, when all sorts of other toxic chemicals get flushed into groundwater. And the oil spills that happen that further flush deadly chemicals both into our water sources and into the air. And how about chemtrails that leave deadly chemicals not only in the air, but fall into our soil and into our water sources. And then there are the EMFs emitted from all of our technology now. Harmful technologies that we can't help but take into our bodies and that cause a number of illnesses and conditions in many people. There's a lot of peer-reviewed studies out there that have proved this. And then there's HAARP and directed energy weapons that have been proven to be used for many years in engineering our weather in negative ways, causing droughts and disastrous storms. And there are vaccinations. If you've been up on these at all, there's so much out there now showing so clearly that some of them contain mercury and a lot of other harmful substances, and they're causing serious illnesses, especially in our children. And there are health epidemics that have actually been created and engineered A lot of documentation on that. I could go on and on. All the evidence is out there. Now, you may think with this, well, this is just greed. Corporations will do anything to make a buck. They don't care about people's health. And this is true. But these things aren't just created out of a lack of caring of how people respond to the toxins. Credible insiders from within these industries tell us there is actually an insidious plan behind it all to weaken and disempower the general population through all these methods. Again, I'm just giving a very brief overview of all the ways we've been controlled and manipulated by a small number of elite families in the world. You can research it all and find the documentation on it. It's depressing and perhaps a bit overwhelming if you're taking it all in for the first time. But remember, we need to wake up to the truth of the darkness we've been living in if we're going to turn things around and successfully begin to create the new earth. We need to first see the cage we're in if we're going to find our way out of it. And at the same time, it's important to keep in mind that there are powerful teams of white hats in all the financial, governmental, military, and social institutions that are currently working to bring justice and freedom to us all from the tyranny of the cabal, causing these dangers to our health and well-being. So it's good to know what's been happening, how we've been controlled and manipulated, but also keep in mind that this whole thing is finally turning around. So, what other ways have we been manipulated? Let me go on here. How about keeping it secret that ETs have crash-landed on Earth a number of times in the past 6 or 7 decades? And very importantly, that secret space programs have back-engineered the advanced technology these ETs brought with them in order to create weapons rather than technology that could have helped to bring everyone on the planet out of poverty and ill health by this time. This is true. Many, many insiders tell us about this. There is clear documentation and evidence that this advanced and potentially beneficial technology has been on the planet for decades, and yet no official reports about the technology or releasing of it, or any reports about the ET crashes have ever been given officially to the public. We only have the information at all thanks to many whistleblowers and investigative journalists who have reported it. One of the most documented researchers about the secret space programs, UFOs, and ETs is Dr. Stephen Greer, G-R-E-E-R. You can check out his website and watch 2 documentaries he's produced on the subject. The first one is Sirius, S-I-R-I-U-S, and the second one is Unacknowledged. He has hundreds of signed testimonials and videos of interviews with astronauts, engineers, and military and governmental officials who have disclosed about the U.S. secret space programs, and yet the cabal has managed to keep all this information from the mainstream media and even from certain presidents while they were in office. There's testimonies about all of this. David Wilcock is another investigative reporter who has hundreds of documents also verifying the reports of insiders in U.S. agencies, military, and corporations who testify about the U.S. cover-up of what has actually been achieved in space. In his blogs and books and videos, of which there are many, you can learn about ETs working at NASA, ET bases on the moon, U.S. and German bases on the moon, and also on Mars. Information that has never officially been revealed to the public. And there are many other investigators and insiders you can research for this kind of information, such as a man by the name of Corey Goode, Michael Salla, James Gilliland, Cobra, and David Icke, just to name a few. I will list a lot of these down below. Now, it may sound fantastical, but there's also much evidence that the Earth is actually hollow, and that ET civilizations have been living within the Earth since ancient times. The Cabal has also had bases underground, many of which have been destroyed by the White Hats in recent years, but they were there for a long time. And there are also now incredible reports of the ruins of ancient ET civilizations that have been revealed through deep excavations miles below the surface on Antarctica. There's a lot out there on these discoveries. These excavations have been in progress for many years by a number of different countries, revealing frozen ET bodies and artifacts from millions and millions of years ago, and even reports that some of these sites inside the Earth have live ET beings still living in them. There's a lot of really fascinating information about the hollow Earth or the inner Earth life that has been going on. Some of the most fascinating information available from secret space program insiders involves evidence that what most scientists believe about humanity's history has been false, not only in the length of time that humans have been on the planet, but also in their origin as a species. Numerous insiders tell us that it was ETs who initially created the human species with their own DNA, and this was millions of years ago. And they also say that a number of times throughout time, other advanced ETs have landed here and have tinkered with humanity's DNA. Now, some of these did this in order to help evolve the race. But some of them did it to dumb us down in order to control us. And in fact, in recent millennia, there's great evidence that hostile ET races that arrived here learned to control us for their own gain, and they're still here. And they have created and used the Cabal member humans to help them do this. Now, this really sounds like science fiction, right? And yet, this is exactly what the Cabal wants us to think. That's why they help to create all the movies and comic books about this kind of stuff, so that anyone working in the secret space programs who might decide to reveal the secrets would automatically be discredited as someone who, they just got their ideas from science fiction movies and books, and no one would believe them. But this is all changing now, as more and more people are educating themselves about these secrets and lies. There's a very credible insider going by the code name of Cobra, who tells the story of humanity's plight throughout its long history in a similar way as others do, but he gives details about the particular ET race that invaded Earth thousands and thousands of years ago and essentially took control over humanity, greatly enhancing the fall of consciousness into the third dimension and introduced all kinds of darkness. They're called the Archons, and it's said that they managed to invade the inner realms of consciousness here as well as the physical material world on Earth. According to Cobra, among other things, these beings managed to actually hijack the reincarnation process on Earth, making it next to impossible for humans to ever get off the karmic wheel. And like Wilcock, he describes the galactic wars within this universe that have been fought for millennia against these hostile ET forces, and that these battles are now almost finally won by the good guys. He asserts, as do others, that not only is humanity at long last being liberated by human white hats, on the planet, but also by benevolent galactics who are battling the dark forces in outer space. And of course, this sounds like Star Wars and Star Trek rolled into one. But as you read his posts, you may feel how his words strike the truth you already know somewhere deep inside of you. The Earth has essentially been in quarantine for thousands of years, and humanity as a whole has been held hostage in darkness and suffering thanks to this race of beings and others who have allied with them. If you delve into this kind of material, you may feel ancient memories awaken in you of how and why you first came to Earth, as you probably did, to assist in awakening and liberating humanity from the control of these dark forces. You may realize just how ancient a soul you are and recall who you were prior to entering Earth and the distorted and limited third dimension of reality that's existed here for thousands of years. As I'm saying, the good news about all of this is that there are light force alliances currently working together in defeating the dark forces. And they're finally now, at long last, winning the battle to liberate humanity. First, there's the Earth Alliance, as I've described, consisting of humans who are fighting within the governmental agencies, the military forces, the space programs, and the corporations to bring down the cabal running all these organizations. Then there's the Galactic Alliance that's engaged in battles in outer space. And this includes beings evidently from numerous benevolent ET races from out in the universe. And there's also the Inner Earth Alliance of ETs living inside the Earth that is assisting both of the other alliances. And there's actually a fourth light alliance that consists of all conscious light workers on Earth who create a powerful frequency field. According to a number of sources, the benevolent galactics say that they use this energy created by light workers as a battery source to draw from. Our thoughts, emotions, and actions are much more important than we may realize, especially as we keep our vibration high through meditation and conscious awareness, and as we send them light and love and positive thoughts. You know, as light workers, it's also important to understand something that may sound a little strange if you haven't heard this before. But we humans evidently have a certain type of what can only be called a type of AI technology that operates within us that has been implanted on the etheric and plasmic planes in our brains and our bodies at birth. This was just part of the deal in coming here to this planet. This is what all humans have inside of them. Among other things, we had to accept these implants in our bodies in order to be embodied here on Earth. And their purpose is to keep us in self-doubt, shame, fear, and guilt. I'm sure you recognize the mechanism in your own brain that's like a machine that's programmed to constantly give you these kinds of negative messages about yourself. And it's important to realize that this is not actually a part of who you inherently are. It's something foreign that's with you. So just remembering this whenever you may fall prey to these negative emotions can help to diminish the power that that technology has over you. Just keep remembering, this isn't me. This is something that's with me. And you will discover that you are a lot stronger and more powerful in keeping your consciousness high than you may realize. In understanding all this, you can become aware more easily that you are inherently a powerful being of light and love, fully connected to Source. You don't have to keep connecting yourself to Source. It's already there, and you can fully feel this and get this. And that you were someone who, in coming to Earth to help humanity, had your memory of who you are completely wiped. And you accepted the constraints of the darkness that were in place on the planet when you came here. And you can now also realize that the time has come to wake up to this truth and break free of the manipulation and control you've been under. It can no longer work successfully on you if you step consciously into your sovereignty and you do not allow it. The really good news is that the work of the Light Force Alliances and the result of the increasing numbers of people waking up now are becoming evident on the world stage. It's clear that the cabal is currently panicking. False flag events, the terrorist attacks that are incited and orchestrated by them, have been increasing, showing their desperation for the control they know they're losing. These terror attacks are attempts to keep people divided, angry, and feeling disempowered. And they've been fairly successful in accomplishing this, except that more and more people are now realizing that these terrorist attacks have been orchestrated. It's not just some angry, crazed individual who created them. And also, the cabal's engineered weather disasters and intentionally set fires are also being exposed as well. In addition, huge pedophile ring and human trafficking arrests have also been occurring worldwide. And you're going to see at some point that pedophilia and human trafficking are rampant within the cabal families. It's actually part of their religion. It is so dark. You don't have to research about that, but just know that they have a satanic religion where human trafficking and pedophilia they're just part of it. Thousands of sealed indictments have currently accumulated in the U.S., far beyond the usual number, hopefully signaling the beginning of mass arrests that have been predicted by many insiders for a long time. Also, disclosure even on the mainstream news about ETs and UFOs is now appearing more and more, making way, hopefully, for full disclosure at some point about the secret space program secrets that have been hidden for several decades. And this is all very exciting. More progress in these directions is reported daily, actually, at this point, on a large variety of websites and videos, if you look for them. But the really exciting thing you can learn about are the predictions from a variety of sources that say that at some time, perhaps even within the next few years, an extraordinary event is going to happen on planet Earth. A similar event has happened on Earth every 26,000 years or so. Some people refer to this as the Day of Revelation, and Insider Cobra refers to it simply as the event. And this is the word that has really caught on with people. Reportedly, this event will initially involve a huge, bright solar flash emanating from the central sun, which is the galaxy sun, that will occur when human consciousness is ready for it, signaling the beginning of the planetary shift. This will initiate a number of events, such as the mass arrests of the cabal, a global currency reset, which will free people financially all across the planet, the release of suppressed ET technologies that will really be beneficial to humanity, greater ease in accomplishing physical and emotional healing at long last, and eventually first contact with the benevolent ETs who have been really, really bringing about our liberation. Just feel into this possibility, even if just some of this is true for the near future. Isn't it amazingly exciting? Isn't this what you have been waiting for? What you are here to participate in? It will likely take a while for all people and structures to shift entirely into the new frequencies this event will initiate. But it will be much, much easier for us to complete our healing journeys and open up to the new, higher frequencies that are continuing to stream onto the planet, and to focus on bringing to the new earth what we have been wishing to bring. So at long last now, we will be able to step forward safely for the first time and be successful in accomplishing our spiritual missions. And you know what? We can already see the signs of humanity awakening if we look for them. There are statistics from numerous different official sources that tell us that despite the dire reports we hear on mainstream news, crime is actually down, really far down in the U.S. than ever before, and especially among the younger generations. And also, many groups of people around the world are waking up, feeling empowered, and they're going around governmental restrictions and corporations, taking charge of their local communities in a lot of positive ways, creating environments that are safe and healthy for everyone living in them. As dark as it may seem at this time as we look out at the world and we experience the challenging shifts that we're also being compelled to make on our own personal ascension journeys, what's happening in the end is all really very positive. We are in the midst of arriving at the end of a very long road of evolution as a race. We just need to keep standing back and keep looking at the bigger picture in order to see this. And we can realize it's really already time to begin celebrating. I've written a book that gives a lot more detailed description of all of this that I've talked about. It's called Triumph of the Light, and you can check it out if you want on Amazon. It's a great way to introduce this material to friends and family members you may have who seem to be waking up. It just brings all of this together and gives a lot of references all the way through it for the sources if you want to follow up on the information. But meanwhile, know you're in good company with many people across the world becoming aware of what is going on behind the scenes, both the dark and the light. Do your best to not get caught up in what the mainstream news is reporting, all the political turmoil, the division, the hatred, or the fear about nuclear war. We're assured, by the way, by many insiders that nuclear war is just not going to happen. The galactics have evidently stopped nuclear missiles numerous times already, and they would again should anyone decide to use them. These are the last days of the third dimension on Earth that we're living through here. Keep remembering this bigger picture. We're in the midst of the final battle, and at long last, after eons of time, the good guys are winning. And we can help speed it up by doing our own inner work and liberating ourselves through healing and spiritual practices, and by remaining positive and loving no matter what may be happening around us. You know, if we stay out of division and thinking there are good guys and bad guys really, you know, on the earth here, it's just all third dimensional mindset. You know, let's just stay in love and harmony and really continue to bring this energy onto the planet. We just need to hang in there for a while longer. With how time seems to be speeding along these days, even if it takes a few more years, we will still be here alive to witness and experience the beginning of the golden age opening up. That really is just ahead of us here. So with this, I send you my love and blessings.